Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Goaltending, where your why is bigger than your excuses. Today is a very special episode. We're doing a dual episode. This is going to be broken into two parts. First part of the episode is me having the opportunity to talk with Dave Carroll and learn a little bit just about his life, his business, challenges he's faced, things he's learned from. And then we're going to pass it over to him to interview me in return. Before we get into all that, I just want to say thank you for tuning in and allowing us to be a part of your journey. It truly means the world. And all I ask is that you like, subscribe, share, comment to really get the information out there to help more people. My episodes are fueled by Prepping with Peppers. So I always want to throw that out there and shout them out and thank them for being a sponsor of the podcast. Now, I want to get into this guy a little bit because when I reconnected with him earlier this year, it was just an instant, like he filled the room with this bright smile. And it's just this, very caring, like kind person. And that in itself, like drew me in. And then I see all these great things that he's doing with his business, and then prioritizing with his family and doing all these different things. And then now just recently starting his new podcast, Cultivated. And so I was like, I definitely got to do some work with him. So Dave Carroll, welcome to Goaltending in conjunction with the Cultivated podcast.
Man, for sure. Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited about this. When I found out when we met, it kind of reconnected, like you said, that you were doing this podcast, I was like instantly hooked because like I loved, the vision that you have for it. And I think I even told you like, hey, like if you ever want, to collaborate, I would love to, chat on your podcast. And so we're finally here. I'm super excited, and we get to, knock it out in the studio space, and it's exciting time. So thank you for having me on for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's the thing, we connected, said, hey, we should do something, and that put it into the universe.
Yeah, we just put it out there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that stuff. What I want to get into, I want to get more of your background, like what got you here. What I really want to know is, where's the start of your journey into entrepreneurship and deciding to, go into business for yourself?
Yeah. That's a great question, man. So I have, when I was in college, I was studying business, and I loved the idea of running my own business. And so I was kind of part of it, but also too understanding the inner workings of business in general. And so I kind of quickly, like my junior year of college, got into what I thought was going to be my career. Mm-hmm. So I started working at a retail store with a large telecommunications company. And in that, because of the people that we encountered in the store, I got to meet a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs. I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs just side by side, people that did this full time, but also had something on the side. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of always like attracted to that, like kind of hustler mentality in a lot of ways, of like people that like did things for themselves. And, I grew up, just to be frank, love my parents are extremely hard workers, but paycheck to paycheck, and, working for the man, and, all that sort of stuff. And I respect that. My mom to this day works for multiple jobs. Like she's just like, she's a hustler in her own right, but like, it's hard, and I wanted something different for my family, I think long term. So anyway, I took several jobs within my company, got promoted, I think 5 times in 7 years, and ended up in Indianapolis. And while I was there, things were really hard. COVID hit. And in that time, I had a lot more time. I was still working, but like we were working from home, and, people were starting to receive extra money, right? They were getting stimulus checks, right? And I've always loved sneakers. And so I saw an opportunity to make some extra money by reselling sneakers. And so, all this time too, some other background in there is that I've been podcasting for several years at this point with my best friend. Mm-hmm. And so I loved media, and, I was using like my media platforms to sell sneakers and things like that. And it was not sustainable, right? It's not a sustainable business model unless you have a brick and mortar store or things like that. And also too, it's a hard game to kind of stay up with and be able to get the inside track on, because everybody was getting into it. And so anyways, I enjoyed it. I love sneakers. It was fun to kind of peddle them and keep some for myself too. I'm gonna front. But so it was kind of like one of the first things I ever did, like, kind of on the side to like make extra money. And then so whenever I moved back to Kentucky. I quit my job. I had a panic attack, and I could go into all that too, but it was just a really hard time. And I quit my job with no plans. I had no idea what I was going to do. I ultimately moved back to Kentucky with my family. At the time, we had 2 little ones, and I took this job in healthcare, basically auditing claims. And I had a little cubicle. It was so much of a change from like the fast-paced, crazy environment I was in.
Yeah.
And it was good for me for a season, but I sit in that cubicle, like bored out of my mind. And the church that we go to, Ashland Community Church in LaGrange, we were starting to be a part of some like refugee ministry. And so if you're in the Louisville area, you know that we have received a large population of refugees from the Middle East, from Africa, over the course of the last several years. And so anyway, at this time, it was the Middle East. And so we were navigating conversations with the Muslim population that was coming to Louisville. And so our church was like, hey, like, you know, you've been podcasting for us and that's awesome. Like, would you be interested in helping kind of like help create a video series on how we can engage the Muslim population? I'm like, sure. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't have a camera. They're like, okay, you know, we do. And, you know, my friend, he did media with me too at the church. And so we just like kind of rocked it out together. And it was so cool, man. I was enthralled. Like every second of it, I was just like, man, this is so cool. Like, I want to do more of this. And so this was like July. No, we filmed in June of 2022. Yeah. And like August rolls around. I'm like, yo, when we going to do another video project? Like, I'm ready to go.
Right.
And the response I got was, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, whatever.
There you go.
And so, man, I was just sitting at my desk. And it's funny, man, how, you know, whenever we talk a little bit about what I do from my podcast perspective, it's funny how the Lord provides people randomly in your life. This guy that I had met at the job I was working, my little cubicle job, he came up to me one day. I was sitting at my desk. He was like, bro, what are you doing here? What do you want to do? Like, I know this is not what you're going to do for the next 5 years even. Like, what are you going to do? And in my mind, I'm like, I'm just trying to be content. But at the same time, I was like, man, what do I want to do? Like, what could I monetize to like provide for my family? That's not me working for another big corporation. That's not me, you know, grinding my life away for other people. Yeah. And so I thought about the things I've been doing, right? So I had been podcasting for a long time. So I knew media. When I was with my big corporate job, I was really, really gifted at promoting me and my team on social media. So, you know, podcasting, social media space. And then I just found this love for filming. And I like went home and told my wife about it. And she was like, you're crazy. And I was like, yes, just a little bit, right? But like she saw that I was really passionate about it. And she was like, man, if this is something that you feel like you should pursue, like, let's do it. And so she was on board. I ordered a camera in October of 2022. I had formed an LLC already. I knew what I wanted to do. Ordered a camera, started showing up to sporting events because I knew that I could get in for cheap. No one was going to say anything. I hit up the ADs like, hey, can I come by with my camera? And they're like, sure. Like, I'm just learning. Like, I'm not going to charge anything. I just want to be there. And I failed a lot, learned a lot, had friends that own businesses, and they let me come in and shoot things for them. And around like June of 2023, I was starting to turn people away and say, hey, I don't have time for this. I literally had 13 vacation days used already, all for working. So I had no more time to take away from work. And my wife, who shout out to her, she is the solid like foundation, and she was the one that was just like, man, like, I think you could do this. Like, I think that you could provide for us full time. And I was like, word? Like, this is what I've been wanting to do for years, right? Yeah. And I was like, let's do it. So we spent a couple months just kind of like preparing for that, you know, getting all the ducks in a row. And October 1st, 2023, I quit my full-time job and did my business full-time. And the growth since then has been wild. And yeah, man, that's really, you know, kind of a 5-7 minute version of how I got here to One Stop Media KY and what I get to do now too on the podcast. And yeah, man, it's been a really, really cool time.
Man, first off, that story just in that few minutes it says so much, and there's like a lot that comes out of that for me. Like I'm sitting here like, man, this is making me want to ask so many questions because there's so much to learn from it. So I think that a lot of people, I think that God speaks in mysterious ways, and I think that it's important to be in tune to what's going on, because a lot of times I think people miss their calling, or they don't realize that like something is in front of them, or they have this purpose and they're having trouble finding it. So like where you said early on that you were asked to do the video project for the church, were you feeling like that was your calling at that time at all?
No, not at all, man. That's what's so crazy. So like, again, I had this podcasting background. When I joined the church a couple months into it, I was like, hey, like, do we have any podcasting equipment? Like, I would love to help like facilitate some of this. And the closer I got to work with my friend Joseph, he was the guy kind of coordinating all of that. And he does a lot of media work for our church as well. He's an extremely talented graphic, guy and stuff like that. And anyway, the more and more I talked to him, and the more like we just gelled really well together. Yeah. Like we were just like, hey, let's do it. We can do it. Like we'll figure it out. Basically, he actually edited the whole thing. He shot the whole thing. I shot some scenes and they were terrible, which is hilarious. Like anytime that I was behind the camera, I don't think we used a single second, which is hilarious to think about. But what I felt so in love with in that time was like, I loved saying like, okay, here's where we are. Like, because we filmed basically in several spots around Louisville, but specifically on Southern Baptist Theological Seminary's campus, because they allowed us to do that. But it was cool, just like, okay, like framing it up and saying, hey, here's the scene we're trying to set. Here's what we're trying to, here's what we're trying to not portray, but here's what we're trying to educate our church members on, and getting and finding the right people that could help convey the message that we were trying to send. And I just fell in love with that, man. I just loved helping bring a vision to life, right. And helping facilitate that. And what's funny is I really don't even like that aspect of it. Like it's just a piece of what I do today, right? Because I kind of do all that other stuff, the filming and the editing and the pre-production and post-production, all that stuff. Yeah. But yeah, man, it's so funny because I would have never guessed. It was just like something that came up, and I've always loved podcasting. I've always loved that side of media. I just had never been able to do it consistently enough to make it make sense, obviously, because it takes a lot of money to do those things.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so I enjoyed it, and it just was like burning. Like it was just like I couldn't turn it off. Like every single time I would think about what I wanted to do, it was like, man, I just want to go pick up a camera. I just want to go, try to film something. Like even if this is my phone, like and so at the time, what's funny is like, right around then, I started doing a lot of the social media work for my church and putting stuff out there. And like, I wanted to help level that up. And so, I was doing some stuff with my phone. Like we had VBS at the time, so I would like take a little video of my phone here and there. But yeah, so that was kind of the start of just like, man, I just feel like I can't get away from it,
Yeah. See, I think that is what people should be looking for, is like, what is it that you're finding like fulfillment from your life? And you don't always have to have like the whole plan laid out, right? But that gives you a direction to start aiming your energy toward, to start like doing a little bit at a time. And you don't have to be an expert in the beginning. Like you don't just wake up a fantastic artist. No, you have to spend hours and hours like honing your craft. And I think sometimes people miss that, or they forget, like, I don't have to be ready today. I don't have to be 100% today. I just have to start.
Yeah. What's the next step I can take? Like, that's what I always tell people. It's like, what's the next right step? What's the next step in the right direction you can take to get to where you want to go? Right. Yeah. And, like so many people, man, they want the destination without the process.
Oh yeah.
Right. They want to get, okay. So like for me, what that would have looked like was me being like, man, I love this. I'm going to go and I'm going to shoot a movie tomorrow. That's a big jump. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, like we just went from like shooting like a 3-minute video that sucked in the grand scheme of things from a production perspective. But it was like, you can't just go to the end of the line. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a process. And so like, I tell people all the time, like, I didn't take classes like YouTube University, bro. Like I literally just, I soaked it all in. I tried, I failed. I would show up my camera to places and be like, dang, dude, I I messed up the exposure here. I didn't shoot this in the right frame rate, and all these different things that happened that like I had to just learn from. And I had to like, I had to do a bunch of stuff in spare time. I was waking up at 4 a.m. when I had to work at 7:30 so that I could figure out my editing, and like, because I didn't want to take time away from my family, like you said, like I put my family in such high regard. I don't want to take away time from them. I want them to be first, And so anyway, like I was doing a lot of extra things to figure it out along the process, that it didn't just look like me going right to the place I'm at now.
Right.
To time, and so I'm with you 100%. Is that like finding something that does bring you that bit of fulfillment, right? And as a Christian, like we're not gonna, in my perspective, like I'm not gonna find that ever in anything fully, right? I can't put all my hope in that. And work is hard. Like we know that.
Yeah.
Like anything we do is hard. I love what I do, and it's still hard, right? And so what's important is finding that fine line, because I know people that work a 9 to 5, and is it the greatest job ever? No, but they like enjoy what they do for the most part. So like that's one thing I also tell people is like you don't have like the grandeur of being like an entrepreneur, being a business owner. Like it's amazing. I love what I do, but it's not for everybody. Like, we need people that work, right? And so it's like, what is it for you? And sometimes your hobby or whatever thing that kind of pushes you makes doing your 9 to 5 fun, that, right? And it's just a hobby on the side, So it's like, you got to think about what makes sense for you, right? I think that's what's so important, is that some people are like, oh man, I love knitting scarves. Like that's cool. But like, are you really going to be able to put out enough production of scarves to provide for your family? Like, I don't know, man. That's tough. Like that's tough to say. Like, but like, if you could like do enough to make you happy and to, sell a few to your family and friends, or not even sell them, give them as gifts, whatever it might be, like, maybe that's the route, right? So like, it's not always about like, what's going to make me money, but I knew for me, I needed to find something that was going to push me and be able to bring in the funds to put food on my family's, plates, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think everybody's just so different in that, so that was just my kind of experience with it.
Health, fitness, fat loss, sleep, all goals that are impacted by the fuel you put into your body. I've tried meal prepping at home, and I've tried multiple meal prep companies, including those that deliver, but I'll be honest, nothing has been better than the meals I get from Prepping with Peppers. They offer fresh, never frozen meals on a weekly rotating basis, so you don't have to get tired of eating the same meals over and over again. So save yourself some time for the things that matter most by ordering your meals at preppingwithpeppers.com.
Absolutely. No, that makes me think too, is that I think one of the things a lot of people forget to do is ask, like, are you willing to pay the cost of what it is that you want?
Right.
Because a lot of people are like, it would be great to have this or to do that, or to lose this amount of weight, or to reach a fitness goal, or to have this much money. But are you willing to do the things that it requires? Are you, whether it's putting in the time and the work and the effort and the energy, like the sacrifices,
right?
Are you willing to pay those costs to get it? I think a lot of people miss that. One thing I want to circle back to is, if you're comfortable with talking about it, what you said you had like a panic attack back at your job, like before coming back home and leaving that job. Are you open to talking about that and kind of like, what led to that, what caused it, and how you dealt with it?
For sure. So at the time, I had an outside sales organization that I was in, and I was the leader of like anywhere from 9 to 13, 14 people. And so that was the job that took me and my family to Indianapolis. And funny enough, it was the job I had kind of dreamed of for several years up to this point.
Yeah.
So this is, I get promoted. I find out I get the job in early January, late December, early January of 2020. We move the last weekend in January, start February 1st, right? We all know what happens from there, right? I go crazy for 5-6 weeks getting to know my team, getting to know what I'm even doing, because I had not been in this organization. I had been in retail prior. And so this was totally a new place for me. So I'm out here trying to get my ducks in a row, but I know how to lead people because that's what I was. I'd been managing people for a long time. And so this was just kind of a next level of management.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, it was kind of my dream job. The salary was, beautiful. It was like a big pay increase, and it was going to allow me to provide for my family in a way I never had before. And so there was just so many exciting things about it. When I get there, I kind of took over a team that had like a issue with their previous manager, and so I had to build like from the ground up a lot of trust, a lot of morale, and I worked really hard at that for those first month or two. Then March 16th, I think ish, we were basically told to go home, and so for a month, 2 months, we're just out here, on Zoom basically, managing a team. And from there, a couple months later, we start kind of going back in the swing of things a little bit. And our channel, I think, because of the way the business was running, retail was not getting as much traffic, right? Because people weren't coming into stores.
Yeah.
And so our channel was heavily relied upon to produce for the company because we were out in the field. We were going into people's homes. Like it was like, that was our job, was to like kind of be out in the mix of everything. And so anyway, with that being said, the pressure literally kicked up tremendously. Like when I showed up, not that it wasn't high pressure before, and I was ready for that. I came from retail's high pressure, but it was just like almost insurmountable at times. And I found myself like probably mid 2020, late like 2020, I started like seeking therapy and counseling because I was starting to really feel the weight of that. Which I probably should have been in it long before that because I was already, feeling a lot of, I dealt with a lot of escapism, right? Because like my previous role got really hard. And so I was like looking for the next thing. And just so happened that I got this job that I've been dreaming about getting. And it was like, man, the perfect storm. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is great, And so I was already starting to have a lot of hard times. And man, I went through a period like, I mean, you kind of said it earlier in the episode. I'm a really nice guy. I love to have a good time. I considered myself a good leader in that way too, where I could really balance that and hold people accountable at the same time. In my previous like 4 or 5 years of management before that, I only ever fired like 1 or 2 people. And in the period in like early spring 2021, I had to fire like 6 people in like 2 months, and had several people quit. And I was being held to goals that were just unachievable. Just to be frank, like, I mean, I was literally like had 5 people and my goals were based on 10 or 11. And like, I just couldn't hit them, and they would be killing themselves to hit their goals because they were great at what they did. And they cared for me. They pushed for me. And I was, working 6 days a week, like, sun up to sundown, like just like getting it. And, it didn't seem to matter. And I would look around and see all my peers chilling. And some of them worked really hard, don't get me wrong, but like some of them were also just chilling in their offices, and I'd be out here running around like a chicken with my head cut off. My team can't get ahead to save their lives, and these folks were like, it seemed like it was coming easy, so I was like really depressed about like the fact that like maybe it's me, maybe I'm the one that's causing this, whatever. And so, man, one day, and I'm super thankful, like I had a boss that was extremely supportive. He and I had a great relationship. And he had kind of known about some of the stuff I was navigating and dealing with, and he offered to help me like kind of find another job within the company, and I tried for a couple months, and just nothing came through, nothing happened. And so anyway, like we had this call on a Friday morning, like every week we had this call, and I mean, I'm talking like as soon as I got on and heard my teammates' voices, heard his voice, I instantly felt this like kind of pressure in my chest. Like, mind you, I was 29 at the time. Like, I felt this like pressure in my chest, and I was like, man, like, what's wrong? Like, am I having a heart attack? Like, I don't know what's happening. Call ends, and like I'm like, and the call wasn't even bad. Like, that's what's so crazy. Like, this is what I tell people, is like, it wasn't even anything he said or anything like that per se. It was just like, I just felt the weight of like everything crashing down on me. Like, thinking I was a failure, thinking all these things, and I was driving in North Indianapolis in an area called Fishers, really nice area. I was going to meet one of my employees, and so I was like in the car, and I hang up the call, and I start to like have like my vision was blurry, and I'm having a really hard time focusing, and pull over at this gas station, open up the door, get sick, call my wife. I'm crying, and I tell her I got to come home for the day. I don't know what to do. And I text my boss, same thing. Hey, man, I'm so sorry. Like, I was going out to meet one of my guys, and like, I just got to go home. I got really sick. I literally went home, cried in my bed for like 2 hours. And my wife came in, and again, she's been such a voice of wisdom in my life. And she's always been so supportive, but she was like, I think you should quit. And I was like, what are we going to do? And she was just so confident that, the Lord would provide for us. And she said, I don't know what we'll do, but, we can we can sell our house, move back to Kentucky, and we'll figure it out. Like, we just need to go, back. And I was like, I agree. Like, thank you for supporting me, basically.
Wow.
So that Monday, I called my boss, and I just told him, hey, I got to let you know I'm leaving. He was like, oh my gosh, what are you going to go and do? And I was like, I have no idea. I just know I can't do this anymore. Like, it's killing me. Like, I'm afraid I'm going to, have a stroke or something at 29. And I was like, but I can't keep doing this. And he was super understanding. And, he let me kind of work out my last 2 weeks there, which was really good. I got to get my, kind of bearings in a row a little bit about something I could do in the meantime until I figured out kind of what I wanted to do. And man, that's kind of the short story of it, I guess you could say. But it was just really, it was a really hard time. And, I'm just thankful for the fact that the Lord sustained me through all that when, I was really distant because I was so in my own head. I was so scared. I was so fearful. I felt like I was a constant ball of anxiety. Like, I just couldn't I felt like I wasn't functioning properly, Like, I was eating terribly, sleeping terribly. I mean, it was just awful, like an awful time. So, yeah, man, that's kind of what happened, what went down. And I'm thankful that, every day that, my wife was an encourager to quit at the time.
Yeah. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story, because I think that, there's a lot of stigma around men seeking help. And I think there's a lot more men that face that type of stress and that type of pressure and those type of problems that do wait too long. Where you said you probably should have maybe been getting help even sooner. I think that's so important to just, the more that you talk about, the more that you share those stories, the more that I think it opens the door to show people it's okay. So I think that's really powerful. Also, man, kudos to your wife.
Yeah, she's a beast.
That support system.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we all strive for.
Yeah.
To have somebody in your corner that supports you. So huge kudos to her. That's so awesome.
Yeah, man.
That kind of leads into, like, we've talked a little bit about the business, and we've gotten into personal and bringing the family into it. So what strategies do you use to prioritize between balancing everything with your business, with your family, and then your own, like, personal goals and personal health? Like, how do you prioritize between all of it?
Man, that's a great question. And to be honest with you, I don't know that I have a set system. It's more so like, hey, here's what I know did not work, right? So when I think back to my days with corporate retail and then the corporate world, like, I prioritize none of that well at all. And if you would have asked me at the time, I was super on my calendar, blah 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 blah. I was really regimented. But throughout that, one thing I did learn, I can look back and see that I was a self-starter. I had no problem, getting up early to get work done. I had no problem with any of that. And so that's really propelled me today to be able to do what I do every day and make sure that I have time for my family. And so, I think the biggest thing that kind of carried over from that, like, life of corporate world was using a calendar well. And so for me, it's like, my wife and I share a calendar. We put everything on there. We schedule in, hey, no, don't schedule anything during this time so we can do XYZ. We got this going on with the kids, because, like, I'm not out here trying to miss things. Like,
right.
I want to be at every single thing I possibly can. Like, I'll go sit in a, gymnastics gym. I have no idea what I'm watching, but I know my daughter's happy and she's doing a great job.
Right.
But I want to be there, And so we make sure we use our calendar really well. I'm now thankfully in a position where like I don't have to take every single thing that comes across my inbox as oh man, I gotta go get this bread. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm thankful that I can kind of say like, hey, like pick and choose. Like I'm at this moment, I just told somebody the other day, at this time, I don't really have time to take on your project. I would love to do that, but like I just can't right now. And so saying no is like, I would say if we could put it in an order, it would be like calendar, really scheduling, saying no to things that I just don't have time for, or that I can't do, or maybe not even in my wheelhouse. So building a network. So this is kind of the third piece to me, is like I've built a network of people that I trust to be able to say, hey, like I've got this client that needs this done. Like I would love to offer you the opportunity to take it, right? And so I built a great network of great supports to some of other creatives in my lane and in my world. A lot of them are better at what they do than what I do, right? So this is great because I can, it makes me feel really good to be able to help provide work for them, and they're good at it. So it makes me and them look good. Right. It's a win-win. So yeah, I mean, just scheduling, saying no, finding people in my network to help me. And man, I've been really, you mentioned it about vulnerability. I think we use that word a lot. Sometimes it's like maybe even like kind of a keyword that's overused in ways and maybe misused. But like I've been vulnerable and humble enough to say like I don't know what I'm doing most of the time, like a lot of the times. And so for me, like I've been willing to meet with people in my space that like other people would be like, oh, I can't believe you're meeting with them, like, or they're meeting with you and they're letting you tag along. Like I've been vulnerable, be like, yo, what you just put out was crazy. Like, can you talk to me a little bit about that? Could you, show me the ropes? Like if they say no, that's cool. I get it. Like I'm not out here trying to like, whatever. But like most of them have been super willing to just meet with me and talk to me about, how they got to where they are and the resources that they've had. And so for me, man, like those have been the ways that I have grown to then be able to do what I do at a more efficient level, at a higher level, and make it make sense for all the things that I need to do with my family and with my job and everything like that. So,
and most of the time, like people want to help because it makes them feel valuable, like to contribute. So I really think it's about just being willing to ask.
For sure.
Because I think that's the thing, is people worry about rejection or looking bad or like looking like they don't know enough, and so they don't want to ask the question. But when you ask those people or you show recognition of those people, generally they want to help, and they seek that. So I think that's really awesome. Also, just great points, because I don't think the calendar and the efficient use of that as a team can be overstated enough.
Absolutely.
My wife and I do the same, and we'll have little meetings where we're like, all right, what's coming up the next month or two? Like what things are already on the calendar? When do I have drill weekends? What is available?
Right.
Doing that planning and talking through, it makes things run so much more smoothly.
Absolutely.
But then it helps you prioritize, like put the things that matter most first, and then fill in the blanks.
And you mentioned it when you asked me the question, like about like balancing personal like health and things like that too. Man, like I even put that on my calendar. Like when I'm like, we go to F45. Shout out to F45 Crestwood fam.
Hey.
Where my man's is now a coach too. Come on. But like even that, like, when I book a class, like it goes on my calendar. And like that's time that I am committing to bettering myself, And so just stuff like that, man. The calendar is crucial to me. I think it's like you said, I don't think it can be overstated enough how beneficial the calendar usage is to prioritization. And then too, like even if you backtrack all before that, it's like, do people even know what their priorities are, right? Are your priorities even in line before you figure out how to prioritize them? You know what I'm saying? Like prioritize your priorities. You know what I'm saying? And like that's something that like, as a young man, that like I didn't do well at, right? Like I don't think I saw what my priorities were until they all fell in shambles, right? And so, then it allows you to refocus and reconfigure and say, okay, well, when I get this opportunity, here's how I'm gonna prioritize, and here's what I'm gonna prioritize, because, the job I had forced me in a lot of ways to like put things in priorities. I didn't want to be priorities, right? And sometimes you have seasons of that. But like that shouldn't be the life that you live, right? No matter what your aims and goals and purpose and focus is, all that junk. Like if you don't have if you don't even know what the priorities are, you can't prioritize well.
Yeah.
And so then, that's where you say, okay, well, like, this is the first step I got to do. The second step is, how do I get there? Is it a big calendar? Is it your calendar on your phone? Does it have anything to do with the calendar at all? Maybe it's some other way that you do things, you use a CRM, right? I know a lot of businesses have CRMs. I have one too, and that helps with my business stuff. But like, what is it that's going to help you make the priorities, make the things that you want to be important and actually do it?
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, and then sticking to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, great points. As we get toward the end of my half of the episode, last question I want to ask is, if you could give one piece of advice to the younger version of yourself, what would it be?
Oh man, that is such a great question. If I could give one piece of advice to my younger self, it would be to, again, my perspective as a Christian for the last 10 years, my perspective, hasn't always been to focus on the most important things. It's been, how can I make the most money? How can I get the most, it sounds silly, but like corporate fame. I mean, that was something that like I pursued after. It was like, I wanted my name to be known. But like, man, if I could give any piece of advice to my younger self, it would be like to like keep my eyes on the Lord. Because like that's what sustained me in the hardest moments. It was my relationship with him, and two, it spills over into how I operate with my family, right? And so like when things were really hard, even before 2020, like I would just press into work more, and that meant that I was neglecting my family in a lot of ways. And so, I mean, the biggest piece of advice I could have offered myself in that time was like, man, press into the Lord, press into your church family, press into the people that actually support you and care about you, not the people that if you were dead tomorrow would replace you in 2 days.
Right.
Because those people don't really care that much about you. No matter how much you do for them, they're going to forget about you and forget about that. It's so true in a metric world. Yeah. A metrics-based world is like, yo, what are you doing right now? What you did last month, what you did last year doesn't matter. It's what you're doing right now. To an extent, I get it. But like that really shields, like that really takes away from the person. And like the people that care most about me, like I, in moments where I was really, sad, hurt, depressed, frustrated, like I just leaned into the place that cared the least about me, and that's really hard. And I learned from that, right? So now I get to be on this end of things and say that, and I get to help other people with that, right? And so,
exactly.
I'm grateful I went through that. I'm grateful that the Lord allowed me to experience that hurt and that pain and that frustration and sadness, because now I get to be on the other side of it and say, like, now when I get to those points, I do know where to turn. But also, for those that are struggling in those ways, I can help them to see it too. So, I'm thankful, but if I could give that advice, that's where I'd go.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think that's really that's the goal, is to take these lessons learned from adversity and challenges and things that we faced and pass that on to try to help mitigate some of those challenges. Right. Now, at a certain point, there's certain things you got to learn from yourself, regardless of what other people say. But when you can share these lessons, I think it really has the ability to impact people's lives. Sure. So, thank you so much for getting into your story and sharing all of that. I think there's a lot of lessons to take away. Thank you all for tuning in, allowing us to be a part of your journey. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment with your thoughts and questions to join the conversation, and let's grow.